Now.
On 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
Good Monday morning to you all. Thanks for joining us here on O'Connor and Company. If you missed the show earlier, make sure you download the podcast. We had a lot of great conversations, and we're rolling along. It's 7:07. We've got a great lineup today. At 7:35, we'll talk to Trevor Matich about the Commanders' loss to the Buccaneers yesterday. 8:05, Virginia Lieutenant Governor Winsome Sears on her exciting news that she's running for governor. And at 8:35, we'll talk to Tom Fitton, president of Judicial Watch, about Trump's latest legal issues. I'm Julie Gunlock alongside Joe Concha, Fox News contributor and author of the new book, Progressively Worse. Hey, Joe.
Progressively Worse, Why Today's Democrats Ain't Your Daddy's Donkeys. It was really cool to hear that the weather was set before 47 degrees in College Park. I lived there for 4 years.
Oh, wow.
I'm a Terp, and we blew it again this weekend. I'm freaking Michigan State at home. Oh, I know you don't watch football very often, Julie, but it's painful to watch my Terps
the rest
just
of the show.
blow it. Yeah.
Well, listen, joining us now is our good friend Joe diGenova. Hey, Joe.
Good morning.
Good morning. Lots to talk about. But first, I want to get your thoughts on the news that it's Russia again. Apparently, Russia is trying to interfere in our elections. Did you hear about that, Joe, this weekend?
When in doubt, resort to old tropes.
That's right.
And I'm not a bit surprised. What's fascinating is that the mainstream media doesn't understand how bad it looks, and they don't understand exactly how far they've fallen. But for the American people, I think they've gotten it. The polls showing that the media is at its lowest ebb in the history of polling data, and there's a good reason for that. And the Russia hoax and the conduct of the media in conjunction with the Biden administration and the Obama administration, it destroyed the media. It doesn't exist anymore, except in a few quiet corners like WMAL and places like that. It's very sad. It was inevitable, but now the media is a joke, just like Russia. To watch Merrick Garland and Christopher Wray at that news conference the other day, I thought I was watching a hostage video. They were so embarrassed to be there, and you could tell that they didn't believe one word they were saying. What they were describing was a routine daily exercise in misinformation by foreign governments, which has been going on since before World War II. And all of a sudden, it's worthy of an indictment. What a bunch of clowns.
Yeah.
And, Joe, that's the thing, right? We've seen this movie before in 2016 and 2020. The fact that they're still pushing this when Joe Biden and Kamala Harris's FBI and Department of Justice are probably interfering. No, I know they're interfering more with this election now, or in our media for that matter, than Russia ever could. I brought it up with Julie before. I'll say it again. Watching Russia with Ukraine, they can't even get to Kyiv, not even close. It's like watching the Vermont National Guard basically at war at this point, that they're this sophisticated country that could actually change even one vote here in the United States is so laughable. And I think this is why we're seeing Trump rising in the polls as much as he is. That's one reason anyway, is because when you can't talk about policy, this is what you resort to, and this is what the media is trying to push. But everybody's just like, yeah, whatever. We've seen this before. We're not buying it.
Joe, you there?
I think we lost Joe.
Did we lose Joe?
I think we lost Joe. The other Joe. The good Joe.
Joe diGenova. We lost Joe. All right. Well, we'll try to get him. We'll try to get him back on. But again, I think what you just said there, is the idea that they have sort of resuscitated this Russia collusion hoax. When Joe, we still haven't gotten apologies for the first Russia collusion hoax. Where is Hillary? Right? Where talking about how she devised the Steele dossier, she paid for it, was all connected to her campaign. Obama knew about it. Susan Rice knew about it. All of these government officials knew about it. These powerful people, they knew about it. Meanwhile, millions of dollars in taxpayer dollars went to this investigation, which resulted in saying, oh, there was no Russia collusion hoax. we're still waiting for someone to apologize for that. It is galling, to say the least, that this has reemerged as the focus when we have really important things going on in this country, not to mention voter fraud and, people on the voter rolls that have no business being there, dead people who weren't born here. Sorry, Joe, I just going on.
Oh, it's all good. No, look, what I want to know is, let's say you're a journalist, right? And you went to a prominent J school, and then you graduated, and you were actually hired by the Washington Post and the New York Times, and then you wrote all these stories about Trump-Russia collusion, and then you won a Pulitzer Prize, and you have that hanging somewhere in your office or in your home. How do you not give that back at this point, knowing what you printed was a lie?
Right.
Yet there were several of those awards handed out to the Times and to the Post for their bogus coverage of a phony story. And yet, you'll never get an apology out of any of these people because the goal was to disrupt the Trump presidency as much as possible, and it did for 3 years until even Bob Mueller couldn't find any evidence of that. And now they're pushing it again. And I think this has a boomerang effect. I think it helps Trump when they start to talk about this stuff because people are like, my grocery bill is still too high. My gas bill's too high. My rent is still too high. I got crime in my neighborhood. I got illegals in my neighborhood that I don't want here. I didn't ask for. My education system's going to crap because it's being overrun. And obviously, I don't like what's going on at the border, and I don't like all these wars that we're in. So, this is a deflection, but it's not going to work because we've seen it before, and the jig is up. The mustard is off the hot dog, as I like to say.
We have Joe diGenova back. Let's bring him back on just for a few seconds. Hey, Joe.
Hey, that was George Soros interrupting my presentation.
Oh, or the spawn of George Soros. Who's it? Alex Soros? Who's the spawn that is getting all these photos with Kamala Harris and with Barack Obama, right? The son of Soros is now risen.
Yes, exactly. Joe, where were you?
So
where did we leave it? Were you about to start an answer? Do we need to repeat the question?
No. We were talking about Russia, and I was explaining that this was inevitable given the devolution of American media and the fact that they're held in such low regard as it is. So that's where we were, repeating the obvious.
Joe, do you think that they are going to, sort of hammer this home to the American public in light of Nate Silver's recent announcement that Trump is looking at a 60% chance of winning? Do you think that they, now. 65%. Do you think that they have just gone into just full panic mode at this point?
Well, there's no doubt about that. I mean, it's pretty clear that the mainstream American media, especially ABC, NBC, and CBS, and MSNBC and CNN, are in Kamala's camp. They want to do everything they can to help her. And by the way, if you're Donald Trump, the one thing you don't want to do in the upcoming debate tomorrow night is ask her questions. Because you know what's going to happen if he does? They're going to turn her mic on and give her extra time. The one thing you do not do is ask her questions, even rhetorical ones, because I can assure you that the corrupt people at ABC News who are in the bag for Kamala will turn her mic on. They are looking for an excuse to do it, and they are listening to the orders that Kamala, is giving them. So
I say
bottom line is the mainstream media is going to do everything they can to help her and hurt him. It isn't even close.
Joe, can you stay on for another segment?
Oh, I'd be delighted to, and hope that George Soros doesn't interfere this time.
Oh, great. Okay, we're going to continue in just a moment, but first it's 7:15. WMAL traffic and weather every 10 minutes. First on the fives.
WMAL.
Making sense of the news.
Live
from the Home Paramount Pest Control Studios.
Home Paramount, the leader in pest control since 1939.
Joe, Judge Merchan has extended or delayed, rather, the sentencing of Trump for another couple of weeks. It was supposed to be in, I believe, July. Then it was September 18th. Now it's going to be after the election. What are your thoughts on this third delay?
Well, it was inevitable that Judge Merchan was going to do something different. He's a very strange judicial hack from New York, not unlike most of the people on the New York State Supreme Court, which is their trial court. And their appellate division appears equally full of hacks. And so I think what they wanted to do was take themselves out of the limelight after the Supreme Court decision in Trump versus the U.S., where the Supreme Court recognized 6-3 presidential immunity from criminal actions after they become president in almost all circumstances, especially after Judge Merchan got one look at Jack Smith's new indictment. He realized that he was dealing with, in the persons of Bragg and Smith, people who are deranged. And so he got himself out of the limelight for a while, because I think the New York court system, after hearing itself repeatedly referred to during the oral argument in Trump versus the United States, kind of figured out that the U.S. Supreme Court is looking over their shoulder. Now, that doesn't mean Merchan isn't going to do something crazy on November the 26th and isn't going to try and lock up Trump. But a lot will depend on whether or not Trump wins the election. If Trump wins, I think he'll get a different sentence. If Trump loses, he'll get a different sentence.
Can you define that, Joe? In other words, a different sentence? In other words, if Trump wins and he's not inaugurated yet, because I think November 26th is the new sentencing date, so then are you saying that Merchan would actually put a president-elect in jail, or at least sentence him to that?
No, there are two theories on this, which have been discussed by a number of us. Number one, he wouldn't put him in prison because he will finally realize that the jig is up. It's time to get out of this, give him some sort of probation or something. The second theory is he is going to lock him up in the hopes of causing a disaster on January 20th and a scene, and making it possible for the Democrats to do during the certification process what they couldn't do during the election process. It's very unclear. And when you're dealing with hacks like Merchan and the New York appellate system, when you're dealing with hacks, you are really dealing with evil, evil people.
That's my concern, Joe diGenova, and we're talking to Joe diGenova along with Julie. That's what I'm concerned about, that if Trump wins, then Democrats, will they have any legal recourse, serious legal recourse, as far as saying, okay, we can't allow a convicted felon to be president of the United States, so electors cannot certify this vote. In other words, do exactly what they accused Republicans of doing after the 2020 election. Did they have any actual legal recourse there?
Well, they don't have it. Now, just remember, in the old days, the answer would have been, of course not. There is no legal recourse. However, in the 21st century, where the Democrats control large parts of judiciary in swing states, anything is possible, even if it's illegal and unconstitutional. We know that state courts have gone out of their way to deny Trump constitutional rights, and they certainly could do it again. It is distinctly possible, and Hakeem Jeffries has talked about this, the minority leader in the House, that they would try not to seat the president, even if he won the Electoral College, that they would not certify him because he was a convicted felon. There's nothing in the Constitution that would allow that. All you have to be is a certain age, have lived in the United States for a certain amount of time, and be a natural-born American citizen. The bottom line is this: the Democrats are capable of anything. Now, just remember, at the time this is certified, you'll have a new House and a new Senate. And if it's a Democratic House and Senate, all bets are off on the inauguration.
Oh, my. Julie.
Joe, I wanted to pivot a little bit over to the immigration problem in this country. We have seen some pretty...
What immigration problem?
Right.
What are you talking about?
I know, I'm just crazy this morning, but we've seen some pretty heartbreaking videos, particularly this weekend. Some went viral out of Springfield, Ohio. A town of 60,000 people has been overrun by 20,000 Haitian refugees, so-called refugees, taking over city services, threatening the residents, littering, again, you name it. It is a total mess. There's even some claims that they are sort of capturing and decapitating ducks and eating pets. It is a really pretty brutal situation, brutal reality down there. What are your thoughts on this? And this is obviously the media is going to do their level best to hide these kinds of testimonies coming out.
Well, the answer, here's the question I have. Where's the United States Attorney for that district?
Yep.
There's all kinds of things the U.S. Attorney could be doing. And the answer is that all the U.S. attorneys in the Biden administration, especially Matthew Graves, the U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia, are hacks. They are political hacks. They are engaged in a strange, sick political ballet to do whatever the great one, Joe Biden, wants them to do, and Kamala Harris. This is a disgusting undercutting of the American legal system This is all illegal activity. It should be being punished. If local people can't handle it, they pick up the phone like they used to do when I was U.S. attorney. They would call me. We would do things. We would help out. We would create a task force. Have you heard anything about that from the Department of Justice or the U.S. attorney in that district? The answer is we have a bunch of thugs running the country, ideological lefties. They are nuts. They don't care about the country. If they did, this would go on for 24 hours in Springfield, Ohio, and it would be put down. By the way, where's the governor?
Yeah, exactly.
Where's the mayor?
Yeah.
Where's the local police department?
Well,
What's
actually,
going
Joe,
on? Why do the citizens have to do that?
Really quickly, Joe, Governor Mike DeWine has come out and said, we're trying to help them. We're trying to coordinate things. We're trying to help them. I used to work for Mike DeWine. He does a lot of charitable work in Haiti. I find this all very odd because Springfield, Ohio is very close to where Mike DeWine actually lives. But they're not trying to move these people out or help this community. They're trying to offer more charity or more sort of social services to these people. That's where the governor is.
This is the Tim Kaine approach to Central America. These are the guys who believe in the revolutionary theology. Bring the world here. We will take care of them.
Yep.
Nonsense. You either have a real immigration system. By the way, the way you help people from around the world is you integrate them into society. They assimilate. They learn your language, your culture, your laws, your constitution. That's what citizenship is about. That's why citizenship is so important, because you learn that you must become a part of a culture and be assimilated. Mike DeWine and governors like him, Mike's not really a Republican. Mike is a revolutionary Christian theologian who believes, God bless his soul for all the nice things he's done in Haiti. That's fine. Do it in Haiti. Don't do it in Ohio.
Yeah. Joe, as always, thanks so much for joining us this morning.
Thanks, Joe.
Hey, Joe, give my best to all my great friends at Fox.
Done deal. Not a problem.
Thanks, Joe. We've got a lot more to get to right now. It is 7:24.
Now
On 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app.
O'Connor and Company.
Good Monday morning to one and all. We are rolling along. It's 7:37 on O'Connor and Company. Got a great lineup still today. And if you missed the earlier show, make sure you download the podcast. We've had some great conversations. But stay tuned for 8:05. We'll talk to Virginia Lieutenant Governor Winsome Sears on her run for governor. And at 8:35, we'll talk to Tom Fitton of Judicial Watch. He's going to give us the latest on Trump's legal issues. I'm Julie Gunlock alongside Joe Concha. Joe, how are you?
Outstanding. I love September. It's the best month of the year. This is why we have more weddings in September than any other month. Did you know that?
I did not know that. And I thought it was spring. That's so interesting. But it is football season. And joining us now is Trevor Matich, WMAL's Washington Commanders analyst. He's going to recap the first game of the season. Trevor, good to talk to you.
You too, Julie. You too, Joe. Wow.
We
have some football, not just talking about potential football. It's not vapor football. It's real football.
That's right.
At least sort of.
That's right, Trevor. There was a lot of optimism for the Washington Commanders heading into this season. People were excited to see the changes across the franchise under this new ownership. But this opening weekend loss to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers showed there's a lot of hard work ahead. What happened?
Well, what happened was Tampa Bay looked like a football team. Washington looked like a bunch of football players. And that was the difference. I mean, Tampa played together well on offense and on defense. Everyone was in sync with good chemistry, at least after about the first quarter to kind of get things kind of rolling. Washington never did look like it was in sync. Defensively, they busted a lot of assignments and allowed a lot of easy big plays from Tampa Bay. And offensively, the quarterback never did connect with the receivers down the field, and the offensive line seemed to struggle with blitzes and with assignments, much less blocking. So there's a lot of work to do yet for Washington.
Trevor, we're obviously talking about Jaden Daniels, number 2 overall pick. He showed some explosive play, particularly he ran for 88 yards, which is quite good, obviously. But I see 17 of 24 and you think, okay, that's good, until you see only for 184 yards. So a lot of checkoffs, a lot of short passes, nothing explosive. He was also sacked twice, as you said, and he was under pressure all day, it felt like. So if you were to grade Daniels in terms of his debut, and again, this is a tough game. It's on the road. The Bucs were a playoff team last year. What do you give him?
I give him a solid B+, Joe. It's tough for quarterbacks making their first start. As a matter of fact, coming into this season, since 2021, first-round quarterbacks making their first start in the season opener the year they were drafted were 0-9. So it's not an easy thing to do. So what did he do well? What did Jayden Daniels do well that fans could say, yes, we can hang our hat on this guy? You talked about the runs, right? He is an outstanding runner. And I was worried about him watching him at LSU because he did the same thing. He ran a lot at LSU. And because he's kind of slight of build, he's not a real thick guy, I thought those SEC defenders were going to break him in half.
Yeah.
But he's really slippery, and he's hard to hit hard because of the way he kind of moves and the way he kind of moves with a hit, like judo more than karate. And, he doesn't take a lot of really hard hits. My heart was still in my throat a lot of the time because instead of sliding, he would do that tumble kind of where he would dive forward. And the problem when you dive forward is that in the NFL, if you're not touched by a defender, you could be rolling on the ground doing somersaults. You're still gaining yards. So if he dives forward, a defender can, while he's tumbling, can come in and smash him. If you go feet first, they can't touch you. So he made a lot of yards running. He didn't take too many big, hard hits. The tumbling didn't hurt him. He needs to learn to slide. The passing, I thought he was quite good. He had some very decisive throws. He had some good throws under pressure. He missed Terry McLaurin on a long potential big play early in the game. Yeah, on the left sideline, just overthrew him. But overall, the problem with his passing wasn't so much him, I think, as it was the wide receivers couldn't get open. I mean, he completed more passes to his running backs and tight end than he did to his wide receivers. And part of the reason was they just weren't available to be thrown to. And part of the reason was the blocking wasn't there to let those guys get open. So that perimeter passing game is a work in progress for sure.
And we're talking to Trevor Matich. He is WMAL's Washington Commanders analyst. So I think when I was watching this game yesterday, I see Jayden Daniels running a lot, 16 times actually for 88 yards. So that's a lot of rushes for a quarterback. And I think back to Robert Griffin III, right? And he was the next big thing for the Redskins at the time and didn't last very long. So I wonder if – I understand running quarterbacks. Lamar Jackson, obviously a little north of us in Baltimore, is a proven commodity as far as running quarterbacks being successful. But I wonder how durable he could be for the long haul. In this division, where you saw the Cowboys destroy the Browns yesterday, the Eagles look good against the Packers. All right, the Giants are, yes, horrible, and as are their uniforms, as we saw yesterday. But this will be, obviously, if we're just bracing Commanders fans for this season, a rebuilding year where we're looking at maybe like 6 or 7 wins. Am I off on that?
I don't think you're off on that, Joe. And I think you're right to compare Jayden Daniels to RG3 in some ways. But there also are some pretty good differences. We talked about how it's difficult to get a hard hit on Jayden Daniels because he's slippery. He moves in such a way that, he's there and then he's not. He's almost like a ghost sometimes. And so that's good when he runs. RG3 was fast, but he was not elusive. So if you could catch RG3, you could hit him hard. And he got hammered a lot. Now, I would hate to see Jayden Daniels think that he can run as much as he did against Tampa Bay and be just fine because he's elusive, because there will be plenty of times when he'll get smashed. And hopefully those first couple of times where it's a super hard hit that he didn't see coming from the side, that he will get hurt so he can learn to not do that. And sometimes you need to know when your journey's over, right? Mm-hmm. But you talk about those other teams in the division. The only way that Washington is going to compete against them this year, it looks like, is to have that extra dimension from Jaden Daniels. So it's a catch-22. If he doesn't do that, this team might not have a chance to compete for a division title, but to compete for a division title, he needs to put himself at risk.
Well,
yeah, and play defense, by the way. Perhaps.
Yeah,
put him on the
can
other
he
side of the
cover
ball.
somebody else's wide receiver? Yeah.
Exactly.
all right, you two.
Really.
We have to keep it there. Trevor, always great having you on. Thanks for coming.
Thanks, Trevor.
All right, thanks, guys.
All right, we've got a lot coming up. It is 7:44.
On the next Vince Colonnese show, the biggest threat to the left, the truth. It tells you a lot. Join us 3 to 6 right here on WMAL.
So, Joe, it looks like Jill might be having some problems or some trouble giving up the luxurious life. Did you see this? These pictures of her hanging out in the Hamptons?
I did, yes. That's quite the rock that she
My
has.
God. And it's not on her ring finger. I mean, that's just one of those, extra rocks that you get.
I played with basketballs that are smaller, right? So that's crazy.
Yeah,
But
so
it's got to hurt her the most, this whole stepping aside thing, because she really liked being first lady.
She loved it. And there was that Vogue article that came out a few months ago. She was on the cover. And in the article, she talked about how she felt quite powerful when the streets are closed down and she's driving and there's no traffic. Of course, Joe actually thought that there was no traffic, just period. He didn't remember when he was like, there's no traffic out there. It's like, Joe, they're clearing the streets for you. You turn up. Anyway, but Jill said she loved it when the sort of parting of the Red Seas, when she's with Secret Service and she's walking through hallways and nobody gets in her way. So she loves the power. And, when there were still the negotiations going on as to whether he would continue to be the nominee, the Democratic nominee, most people thought it was Jill who was the holdout, right? I mean, a clear case of elder abuse, if you ask me. But I think she is going to struggle, and she loves sort of being in these sort of with these sort of rarefied groups of people, mingling, with the rich and famous.
Wow, the pretend doctor was our pretend president for a while, I think. I think she really, not just the first lady thing, but probably was making some pretty big decisions for her husband, whose brain has turned to applesauce, as we have seen. And again, I'll ask this question, as we may have to depart soon. Why is Joe Biden even president right now? If you can't run the country for the next 4 years, what gives you the right to think that you could run it for the next 4 months? Yet there he is, barely, right? I mean, we almost never see him. He's constantly on vacation. Every weekend is a weekend at Bernie's. That's a long, extended vacation. And the fact that Kamala Harris is out on the campaign trail, or in this case, holed up in Pittsburgh studying for the debate, begs the question, Julie, who is running the frigging country at this point?
Yeah, who is running the country? It's really terrifying. We'll talk more about this, but right now it is 7:53.